What is up, everybody? Welcome to Nerdy 430, the show where comedian Tim Keck and I nerd out about stuff that we have watched lately. I'm Kevin Bauer. Today we're talking about episode 3 of Loki on Disney Plus. Tim, what did you think?
Kevin, I'm sure this is the wrong way to start off a podcast about just TV shows that we like and we watch and encouraging people to listen to the end. I feel like I'm kind of out on Loki. I feel like cool stuff happened in this episode and I felt nothing. And I didn't realize that the revelations in this episode were revelations until afterwards, like thinking back and doing some little digging online. But in general, I'm not enjoying hanging out with Loki as much as I've enjoyed hanging out with all the other characters on the other TV shows that Disney's done.
Yeah, I got to go with you there. I think that, the first 2 episodes, they set up some really, truly cool shit. But honestly, in those episodes, Owen Wilson was still on the show. I was really loving watching Owen Wilson. This episode, no Owen Wilson. And it hurts for it. I like Loki as a character. I enjoy him and stuff. You know, he's got his own thing. But I consistently don't enjoy watching him in this show as other people on the show. Sylvie in this episode, I thought she was great. I liked watching her way more than I liked watching Tom Hiddleston. And I'm on record the last time we podcasted saying that I wish it had been Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I've never seen this actress in anything else. So then this episode was the first real exposure I've had to her. She's fantastic. She gets the coolest fight scene that we've seen in the show so far in the very beginning, in the opening. I find her more endearing than Tom Hiddleston.
Lady Loki is awesome. I think Lady Loki and Tom Hiddleston have better chemistry than Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson do.
Okay, can we talk about that real quick?
Yes, I would love to.
Lady Loki, Sylvie, and Tom Hiddleston have such good chemistry that I spent a good amount of this episode wondering if they were going to hook up.
They should definitely. If they don't hook up, then what are we doing with this show? What is the point of the show? There's nothing more Loki I think we've talked a little bit about how like this Loki doesn't make sense. I don't understand the character of Loki. I'm not sure the television show understands what Loki they're talking about, but there's nothing more Loki than Loki hooking up with himself from an alternate timeline. That in my mind plays exactly into who the God of Mischief really is.
Yeah, it's such a fun, weird, fucked up idea that I really want to see it happen.
I don't know if it's a thief, but it was definitely a positive note for me is like the reveal that Loki is pansexual or bi or whatever. I kind of heard about it at all, but now he finally acknowledges like I've hooked up with princesses. There's something about like pansexualness in certain characters that makes them just more badass, you know, like Lando Calrissian in that Han Solo movie where Donald Glover is just like, yeah, Lando fucks everything. He's been fucking this machine this whole time. He's definitely fucking things with tentacles and stuff. And it's just like, I don't know. The idea of Loki just being like here to party and like, yeah, man, I'm down for whatever. It's just like that also makes sense for his character. I mean, he's a god of mischief. He's definitely, I think his biggest character flaw in the cinematic universe is not thinking about the consequences of things. Mm-hmm. And he just acts impulsively. Like his whole character is impulse. He's mischievous because he's just shooting from the hip all the time and not thinking about how will this impact the people I love or care about, or, you know, would this come back to bite my mom? Would this come back to negatively impact stuff? Do I really want to murder a bunch of people in New York, or do I just like the idea of being a king? Like, I don't know. I don't know what you think about his character. Or like, what? It just seems weird. It just seems a little off to me, right? We're still like this Loki is days away or days after the Loki that just attacked New York and like murdered a bunch of New Yorkers, and now we're just like watching him flirt with himself in a time train. It's weird. The whole thing's weird.
It's too much too fast. I would accept all of it a lot better. We got the note in the first episode. He asked Mobius how long he'd been there, and he said it wasn't too clear. Time moves differently in the TVA. One note where we hear Loki saying like he's not sure how long he's been in the TVA or something like that. We can infer it, but I want to hear it actually said so that we know, like, for all we know, this Loki we're watching has been in the TVA for 5 years. That would make some of the character changes that are happening with him a little bit more palatable, because I'm thinking the same thing. This is the same Loki that just is fresh off the Battle of New York. And now suddenly he's completely fine just wearing a suit and a tie and being kind of like an errand boy to the rest of these TVA people. And it's like, yeah, he has an ulterior motive where he's trying to get at the timekeepers, but it just seems like a lot because it's so different from what his life on Asgard was. Like, they didn't wear ties. It's just a massive, massive change. And we haven't really seen that much that justifies it.
I want to compliment your tie and suit take, because that stood out to me so much, that he is on a planet floating through emptiness with Lady Loki. She's in like her Lady Loki garb, and he can turn into anything. We know he can change his appearance. He can change his costume. He can manipulate anything. What is he wearing? He's wearing a suit and tie. He's wearing a tie and just slacks. And I was like, this is how Loki sees himself now? He sees himself as a guy who wears a tie, rolls up his sleeves, and then, like, I don't know, audits people. Like, it's weird. It's a weird character choice, isn't it? Why does he wear a suit and tie? Why does he choose to wear a suit and tie?
Because he wouldn't necessarily have to. We don't know. When we saw other versions of like Loki variants and other multiversal versions of Loki in that quick like hologram projection, they all look radically different. So, and again, I mean, we can assume that if he was wearing his full on like Loki attire, the horns, even just his like trench coat or whatever it is, that he would look sufficiently different from whatever Loki they're trying to hunt. And, you know, if that's not the case in world, fucking write it so that is the case. You're a writer. You have control over this world. Anytime I get hung up on one of the things like that, where it's like, oh, they can't do that because the TVA wouldn't be able to tell the two Lokis apart. Fucking write a thing so that the variant Loki wears red or something. Like, you can make it work.
Yeah.
It's frustrating to see that. And he's
not rocking that great Loki green color that we all like. Like, even if he's wearing the suit and the jacket or whatever, like green tie, let's give him something. He's just no longer Loki anymore in a lot of ways. And it's weird.
It's the frustration we talked about last time we did the podcast too, where it's like, look, ostensibly the show is just called Loki. Even the title sequence, we're seeing the letters in Loki shifting in and out of different fonts, different styles to kind of convey the idea that there's a hole in the whole multiverse. There's all these different variations on Loki. We should be getting to the heart of who this character is. We should be seeing the different variations of Loki. And then when we're seeing the core tenets that make them Loki, we're realizing, okay, this is who this character is. And ideally, like, this is specifically the MCU's take on Loki. This is what makes the MCU's Loki versus like Sylvie. And we're not getting any of that. It's something Spider-Verse did perfectly, where Spider-Verse, weirdly enough, is like, I think maybe the best Spider-Man movie, because in seeing the concept of Spider-Man through a bunch of different lenses, you get that uniting factor for like, this is what makes a Spider-Man Spider-Man, regardless of whether it's Miles, Peter, Penny Parker, any of that.
And you're right. Because they do this in the other TV shows. And regardless of like the other flaws in the Disney shows, WandaVision is about the Scarlet Witch coming to grips with the Vision's death. That's character growth. And then we're seeing Anthony Mackie, the Falcon, becoming Captain America and dealing with the consequences and ramifications of that. Like, both of those shows are all around character growth and character development. And I don't know what it's supposed to be in Loki. We don't know. We haven't been told yet. Like, what's supposed to happen with him? What is happening with him? Is he learning anything? He's basically just reset to the old Loki at the end of Ragnarok or whatever. But
that's what has this episode frustrating me so much, is that I feel like the first two episodes, we were setting up the arc that the rest of the TV show was going to follow. And then the third episode feels like a departure from that arc. And it feels like it slows down the progress in such a way that now I'm not sure what the rest of the show looks like. We're at the halfway mark. There's 3 more episodes of this left, but I still don't feel like we are closer to finding that overarching theme of like, this is who Loki is supposed to be growing and turning into. I don't know that we've seen enough of like the character progression steps and, you know, the Joseph Campbell storytelling device framing, whatever you want to call it. I'm not super satisfied with where we are so far. And I think my big complaint with this episode specifically is that it didn't need to be a whole episode. We can have this interaction between these two characters and it could be like a scene or two. They spent most of this episode fucking arguing, and it wasn't like compelling, fun arguing. It was like they were at loggerheads and they kept trying to kill each other. And it's like, we don't need to keep seeing that. We get it. We got it the first time it happened. We can move on.
It felt very unearned somehow. Them just spending we got a filler episode. It felt there were like a couple revelations, which we should talk about, but it felt like filler to me. It's just them. The plot doesn't move forward. It's literally them just stuck on a planet trying to get off. They start the episode like stuck on a planet. They end the episode stuck on the planet like nothing happens. It's the definition of a filler episode, but we enjoy filler episodes because it's more time to spend with the characters and we see them grow and develop. And I don't feel like we really got that at all. It's very fun I like watching them hang out because they get along and there's chemistry, but they're talking about like they're talking about what love means to them. Like I couldn't be less interested in a topic than like hearing what Loki thinks love is. Like, it's weird. I mean, talking about their moms is interesting, I guess, but it's kind of just like, why are you guys bonding? Why are you trying to bond? Why are we like forced into this situation? It's also strange to me that we spent 2 episodes building up this big bad that we don't see their face. We don't see they're in a hood the whole time in the first episode. It's complete mystery. Second episode, it's a reveal that it's Lady Loki. And then the third episode immediately takes this threatening, looming, evil villain and just humanizes them to the point where they're incompetent. Right? Like she doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know where to go anywhere. She's getting like shot in the chest by people. She needs this other Loki in order to function, which just really declaws your big bad villain for the show immediately. So I just thought that was weird. That was an interesting choice. Like, you don't want to, I don't know, see her do horrible stuff or see her do more dastardly things, or I don't know. It felt kind of lame to have this heart to heart with a character you just met that isn't a threat.
Yeah, it's whiplash. It's specifically because they were setting Sylvie up to be this like really, this massive threat. We hear about the way that she has been planning this time bomb effect on the TVA for years, which also the years thing is a little bit strange because I don't know. Again, we've talked at length about how time is weird in any kind of a show that involves time travel. So saying that you've been setting something up for years when you're a time traveler, I don't know if that has the same weight, but she's been planning this for a long time. She's pulled it off, and we see in the very beginning of the episode, again, the best fight scene we've seen in the show so far. And then we immediately get to a point where she's just kind of helpless, and that sucks. I want to continue to see her being a massive threat. I think it just means we're going to get a bigger bad. There's going to be another Loki, and that's going to be the Loki that our Loki and Sylvie have to take down together. But
the idea of a different Loki is interesting. I feel like we are definitely coming towards like a TVA revelation that all is not as it seems in the TVA. And we already got a nod to that with the TVA, the reveal, I guess, that all the TVA people are human. You know what? I'll phrase it like this, Kevin. When did you know that all of the employees of the TVA were human beings from Earth?
I suspected it all along. Again, it was nice to have that confirmed. But as soon as they had said that the TVA created, the timekeepers created them, and the employees of the TVA have always been there, the TVA felt a little too human. And I was thinking the entire time, these are people that died. Or the revelation that they're all variants was super cool, because that puts the extra framing in of how I thought it was so strange how in the first couple episodes that one agent was so aggressively anti-variant and was talking so much shit at Loki about it. And then the realization that she's a variant too. It's very interesting. She just doesn't know.
They're all variants forced to hunt down other variants. It's super interesting. And then they've got to be mind controlled in some way. They're being manipulated either just through the education system there, or their minds are getting wiped and replaced, or I don't know. Something's going on.
It's all McGraw-Hill.
Really? Open your textbooks, guys. You've always been not a variant. You were made at the TVA. It's like, I'm pretty sure I remember a week ago being born, being abducted from Earth. I don't know. Yeah, they're being enchanted, so to speak, as the Enchantress enchants her victims. The TVA has enchanted Owen Wilson to do their own dirty work.
That's my one supposition too. We've talked about the concept of what if Sylvie is the Enchantress and not a Loki. I think it's possible. It's possible to just go with the route that this Lady Loki becomes the Enchantress. I also think that there's a chance here that Sylvie might not be a Loki. We haven't heard her talk that much about her past. So her past is still kind of a mystery. Our Loki even brings that up. I'm wondering if she's concealing her past because she's not actually a Loki. She's dressed as one for some reason. She's trying to tell the TVA that she's one for some reason to conceal her true identity.
What could we possibly get out of that reveal, though? I agree. I think it's definitely on the table. But isn't it even a stronger story if she is a Loki and she's dealing with a variant? And the Enchantress, I mean, Marvel doesn't feel an obligation to keep the Enchantress and Lady Loki separate. I think that's kind of like a trend that the Marvel movies do. They'd be fine with combining these two characters. I think they just, saw the name Sylvie for the Enchantress, threw it on Lady Loki, and they're like, this is what it is. I think it's a Loki variant with the name of another character that has power similar to another character, and this is its own thing. I think that's kind of their Marvel MO. I think it would be cool. I did have that thought of it could be anybody. It could be somebody else, but would the reveal that it's not Loki have any kind of payoff at this point?
No, but I think it would be consistent with the rest of the show. the rest of the show having seemingly no interest in giving us rewarding character information about Loki.
That's true. Yeah, if that happens, that'll be a bummer of an episode of us. This is not great. Not super interesting.
Speaking of bummers of episodes, this episode I talked about how this show in general is really similar to Doctor Who. This episode is the most similar to an episode of Doctor Who that the show has done so far, and I mean that in a bad way. This reminds me of, it's the same kind of a bad lull filler episode that Doctor Who is full of, and it shares some other big similarities with Doctor Who as well. Tim, when did you know that this whole episode was being shot on the set from The Mandalorian?
Whoa. I didn't. It makes complete sense, though. That's a good one. Did you know? I had no idea. Wow, of course it was. Why wouldn't it be? It makes complete sense. All of a sudden, that's just Disney's justification for why they wanted to put Loki on this planet was to cut some budgetary corners, I think. They introduced it into the plot. That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Well, they're using that thing. It's called stagecraft, which is the giant screens that are the product is called stagecraft. They're not using that. I learned about this in a theater class. It's called stagecraft.
They're using poise they're using artistry.
The Meisner technique. So this thing, stagecraft, it is this giant set where there are these screens that they project live in the room backdrop onto, so the actors can see the backdrop, the CGI backdrop that they're in front of, and the backdrop moves with parallax effect with the camera. So if the camera moves to one side, the background moves accordingly. It allows the director, the filmmaker, whoever is there, to make sure that they have the right focal length for the shot, and it allows the actors to interact with the backdrop a little bit more. I noticed that you can totally tell that it's in play in the second episode when they go to the volcano eruption. Just there's something about it. You can tell it's not quite right in the background. In The Mandalorian, they have it tuned fucking perfectly. There's so many shots in that show where I watched a behind the scenes feature on it. Never would have known that it wasn't a practical set. For some reason on Loki, you can 100% tell they are not nailing it.
No. The Mandalorian mixed in a lot of practical sets, though, didn't they?
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of it, too. Is just if you're, I don't know, maybe it's easier to go back and forth between the two, but I don't know. It feels like just a lot. You're right. The Loki backgrounds are just more fantastic and visually complicated. So, and then it stands out. You're right. The volcano erupting, it definitely has that kind of green screeny effect of somebody being like kind of superimposed in front of this independent background.
It's kind of, it's very B-movie, and it stands out to me because the production design we've talked about in the TVA is so good. And just to have that contrast between the sets, like the actual practical sets they're in, looking incredible. And then anytime they go to a timeline, it immediately looks like a low budget episode of Doctor Who. It just throws me through a loop.
You're right. This planet thing is a visual departure from the TVA, which looks amazing and super cool. And the design of it is super neat. So
even when they go to the grocery store, the Roxcart grocery store in the second episode looks wonderful. It looks like such a practical. It's supposed to be the year, I think, 2050 in Alabama. And it looks like what Walmart is probably going to look like in 2050. There's like a robot running through the stores, but there's still basically the same brands that we've seen. Nothing really looks that different. It doesn't really look like a Jetsons future. It just looks like a boring consumerist future that we are probably going to have.
Yeah, I agree. You want to get into some categories? Should we do some beefs?
Yeah, let's do it.
Here's a beef. Loki walking around with the knives is so lame. I don't know. There was something so lame about him getting the knives out of the locker, and then they're showing us with Loki holding the knives. It's just show us a shot of the locker and then reveal that Loki has the knives later. Why is that? Like, that's the Loki thing to do, is him pulling a knife out of the air and just and attacking her with it. But now we have this awkward scene of him, like, you know, handling them in the hallway, and it just felt very un-Loki and lame to me. I did not like it.
Agree.
So the final scene at the end where they're like running around, the world is ending, the world that they're on is ending. People are trying to arrest them. Why are people trying to arrest them when the world is ending?
That was one of mine too. It makes no sense. Who are these weird space cops? Everything is collapsing around them. Nobody would be paying attention to that anymore.
Right. Once the world starts collapsing around you, maybe the thought of doing your job and stopping somebody for like a ticket infraction will like stop crossing your mind. I guess at this point they've like maybe killed people or hurt people, but that was on a train that then they escaped, and then they're running through a town. And why are the cops in the town after them so viciously while everything's falling apart? It's weird. It doesn't make any sense. The other thing that I kind of have a beef with is, do we need to explain their magic, like how Loki's magic works? They love talking about like Enchantress. How do your powers work? Loki, what is this illusion thing, this magic? And I'm like, I don't care. It doesn't make a difference to me. I get it. He's magic. We haven't had to explain it for all these other movies. We've seen other types of mind control with the staff that Loki used, right? And so we're familiar with mind control. I mean, the idea of enchanting somebody is not crazy. The Scarlet Witch did it in Age of Ultron. Like, we've seen this kind of behavior before. It doesn't work on Loki because his mind's too strong. I can assume that it won't work on other people because their minds are too strong. I can assume that it doesn't work at the TVA because they have all these power restrictions on. Loki's magic doesn't work there, so of course her magic doesn't work. Like, I don't need all these other explanations, especially when they explain all this magic and then Loki can telekinetically throw a skyscraper into the air.
Yeah, what the fuck was that?
It's wild. I mean, we've seen him use telekinesis before, but it's, you know, calling a Roomba into his hand or throwing the chairs around like prison cell. But in this, he lifts a skyscraper off of his like tons and tons of weight. He just somewhat effortless. I mean, there's a little bit of effort, like, about the same effort I'm going to use to stand up right now. Loki just throws a skyscraper into the air. It took
me out of it.
Dumb.
It was ridiculous. It was so insane and beyond anything we've ever seen the character do. Explaining the magical powers too is the wrong kind of character details that we should be getting in this show. We don't need to know the minutia of how the powers work. We want to know more about this character, what makes the character tick as a character. This show also has an unbelievable opportunity based on the way that it's been framed up, where we have this Mobius character that's been studying all the variations of Loki for decades. This show has the unique ability to tell us a lot about a character and have the information not be coming from the character themselves. Because if it's coming from the character themselves, it's always going to be subjective, and it's always going to require some kind of a moment in the story that explains why your protagonist is describing themselves as a person to somebody else. It's always kind of hard to write yourself into that situation, where we have this unique opportunity for Owen Wilson to lay out to Loki exactly what Loki is like. We get a little bit of it, but when it comes time to do the actual meat and potatoes of what the character's saying, it's again coming from our Loki to Sylvie in a very unearned conversation. It's really strange.
We also are set up with a character moment where a character speaks to a version of themselves. And did we learn anything about Loki as a character through that interaction? I'd say no, right? Other than what Loki, the kind of what we get out of a conversation that Marvel staged between Loki and Loki was just the Loki we're familiar with explaining who he is to the other Loki, when it's an amazing opportunity to reveal who Loki actually is by the interactions or the expression of the variant, right? Exploring the variant's character is indirectly reflecting on Loki, whether or not we see their behavior and he condones it or tries to explain it away, or maybe tries to teach them that that's not what he's about anymore. We can see by the way their interaction, we should be getting more character development than we have. It's definitely a missed opportunity.
Yeah. Ugh. So, that's one of my beefs for sure. Another one of my beefs, not since the first couple episodes of Falcon and the Winter Soldier has there been such egregious exposition in the fucking dialogue. We get it when we see a line of poor people outside of a train and rich people are being let onto the train. We get it. We understand there's a class struggle going on. We don't need multiple iterations of one of the poor people going, "You're only letting the rich people on board. What about us poor people? Look there, that person, they're rich. I am poor."
That did stand out to me as like someone... And every time I see something like that, I can't help but think this is like somebody who like had to audition a bunch, and they like, and they told their whole family, "I'm going to be on Loki," and they like rehearsed their lines so much. And there was this one shot, I think, of this one woman who does like, "We've been waiting for hours," and then like an exhale and just like shakes her head in frustration. And I was like, oh my God, we don't need this. I don't need this. We can tell there's a long line. People look miserable. We don't need this exposition. But like, this was a paycheck for this actor, and they probably rehearsed that line a lot. It was probably like a really big deal for them. And somehow that made it seem like, I don't know, like just lamer that it happened, like, why are we wasting people's time with this? It's just unnecessary. It's just an unnecessary thing.
It's totally unnecessary.
It's subtraction by addition.
Do you have any thieves for this episode?
Do I have any thieves? I thought it was a great moment was Loki smashing a glass and saying another.
Yes, that was wonderful.
That's a super sweet moment that it's just great. And Loki also wasn't there for that. So he wasn't there when Thor did the same thing in the first Thor movie, where he the first time he gets to Earth and doesn't know how to interact with people, he drinks from a coffee cup and then smashes it in this diner. And it's a funny nod to his relationship with Thor. And you can kind of picture the two of them partying, drinking like a beer together, an ale together, and then smashing the glasses and screaming together another.
It's legit great world building.
It's great world building and the kind of stuff that we expect from these kind of TV shows and these super character focused things. That stood out to me. I mean, we talked about some of the stuff that I thought was cool. I like the shots of them like walking on this planet while it's crumbling apart and meteors are falling is pretty neat. Loki's sexuality, that's a cool reveal. I think that's fun. And it suits the character.
Definitely.
The other thing I really liked, even though I didn't love this, I don't think the scene makes any sense, but the episode ends with them being unable to get off this planet. And Lady Loki just turns and walks away. And Loki stands there in disbelief while Lady Loki turns around and just walks away. And I think that's kind of two different approaches to their characters and maybe somehow the biggest difference in their characters throughout this episode. I like that. I like that she did that. I'm confused by what it means, but I think it's a cool character moment.
Yeah.
What about you? Did you have any thieves? Anything stand out for you?
The only thing that really stands out is the reveal that the TVA employees are all variants, because when I did
that's cool
assume that they were humans, I did not assume that they were variants. And I think that's a very specific twist on it that makes it a lot more interesting. So I like that a lot. And I'm really curious to see what happens there. But I think that's about it. I like that they explicitly said that Loki was bisexual or pansexual. I guess I had always just assumed that was understood because the character in Norse mythology is gender fluid and pansexual. So I didn't know that was a question mark, but I like that it's made specific because I know that it's nice for representation and it's nice for people to see that with a really popular character and feel seen. It really confuses me that there's backlash to it. It makes a ton of sense for the character. Again, it's in the mythology that the character is based on, how it's built into Loki as a person. I don't understand how anybody has an issue with that.
Is there backlash? I haven't really seen that much backlash on it. I think I've seen people talking about it like positively because this is also something that they've been talking about with the character for a while too. It was nice to finally see it on the screen, but I think it's something we've all heard or talked about or rumored about off screen for a long time. And I think it's great, obviously, because the last LGBTQ character they had was that one dude in Endgame.
Yes,
not a superhero, just hanging out with Captain America. So this is like the first or maybe the second, LGBTQ character plus we've had. So it's cool. It's neat.
Well, yeah. Didn't they cut a scene in Ragnarok that confirmed that Valkyrie was either bi or gay? I thought there was a scene.
I thought there was something like that. Like she's supposed to be bisexual, but we don't see anything on screen that would confirm that. We have sexual tension between her and Thor. We don't see her flirt with any women or anything like that. So it's another thing that they talk about off screen, or like how it's probably we all kind of know about, but it's not actually shown. Yeah. So it's nice that they just have a blunt conversation about it. But then that turns into like a whole love thing. And it's like that comes about because through this forced conversation of them asking if they've ever been in love. And it's just like, weird. I don't care. Like, I don't care about that. It would be, I was half expecting them both being like, well, we're stuck on this train. What do you do they're like, we need to stall. We've got a bunch of time to kill. What do you do for fun? Smash cut to them just like hooking up in a bathroom. I was like, that would have been awesome, is them just going after it. And it's impulsive. It's like what I picture the Loki character is. They've kind of turned him into this buffoon and this idiot. But I think the problem is that he's impulsive and he doesn't think things through, but he's very good at getting the first part. He's very good at, the semantics of them talking about a plan. This isn't a plan. This is just you doing a thing to get on. And it's like, what's the difference? What's the difference? This is just, she wants a plan and he's just impulsively does the costume thing. Did you follow any of that at all? That was just another dumb conversation they had.
Yeah, it was exactly what I'm talking about. They're just kind of bickering and I don't know, quibbling the entire time. And it's not in an interesting, fun character interaction way. It's just in a way that's annoying to the viewer. It just feels like it's not productive. Episode could have been a scene, and we could have gotten all the same cool reveals. This one bummed me out.
Nothing. Yeah, you're right. Nothing that was revealed, like the big revelations, could have easily been inserted into almost any other scene.
Yeah.
We meet characters in this. I don't think any of them are coming back. It was just like a bottle episode with two characters that felt undeserved because this was also their first interaction.
Mm-hmm. So, Tim, you wanted to do a new segment. You wanted to do reckless hindsight instead of reckless speculation. So how do you picture this going?
We speculated last week, and I think we both had different ideas on how this show could have turned out. So I'm going to put on my Captain Hindsight cape and talk about how I think this all should have gone and what we should be watching right now. And I'm excited about this one. We've kind of touched on this before. Loki should have been recruited to the TVA to hunt other Loki variants. And by now, 3 episodes in, we should have seen him capture, or at least come close to capturing, 1 or 2 different Loki variants. This honestly could have been an episodic of him and Owen Wilson working together, True Detective style, solving cases. Oh God, an episodic would have been so cool. Just like 2. You know, first episode, he's recruited. He's in the TVA. He meets Owen Wilson. End of the first episode, they're on the trail of something. Second episode starts, they've caught their second guy. Or you know what? Maybe they've caught like their 8th variant, and we show time passing that way. And then
I was going to say the exact same thing.
By the 3rd episode, we've already seen Loki take down, like, in the teens, Loki variants. He gets caught up with this one who is like the big bad Loki. Then they have a bottle episode where she's explaining to him that actually the real enemy is the TVA. And she introduces him to a team of Loki variants that she has assembled to take down the TVA. And so now Loki has to decide, does he stand with Owen Wilson or this guy who has shown him that he can be a superhero and work for good? Or does he side with himself, help bust the Loki variants that he captured out of jail and overthrow the TVA? This whole thing ends with some compromise, right? Where like Loki realizes that neither side is right and then has to make like a character growth decision that ultimately proves that he is the best Loki and the ultimate Loki, because he's able to take the best of both worlds and combine them to something new. And then we deal with the consequences of this in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. And here's my favorite part of this pitch, Kevin. You know what we call the show? We call it Loki's. Throw an S on the end of Loki. And the whole thing is him dealing with other versions of Loki. And all of a sudden it feels more like something that Loki would actually be doing. That's my pitch. What do you think?
Let me tell you this. I love this. I want to make 2 small tweaks to it. Mm-hmm. Number 1, I'm on board with everything you said, except for when we do the team, when Sylvie reveals the team. If we do an episode where the team goes into action, I'm picturing like the heist episode they did in Mandalorian, where by the end of it, pretty much the entire team that was assembled is in jail on this place they're breaking into. They're like breaking into a jail. They all end up in the jail. I want the same thing where she's assembled a team. We see the team go on a mission to accomplish something, and the Lokis on that team are getting picked off left and right.
Yes.
That way, by the end of the episode, they aren't dangling threads, and we've established to our Loki that Sylvie is the most dangerous one of all because she doesn't give a fuck about any of the rest of their lives. They're just pawns to her to accomplish her game.
I agree.
I think that's interesting. Also, the only other tweak that I would do, take that S off there. You keep it as just Loki. Because I think this is exactly what we should be doing with the show, is we're seeing all these different variations on the same character, and then we're seeing what makes them this character and what makes our version of Loki. So I still think it's exactly like what we talked about. It's a situation where we use the other versions as a mirror to reflect our Loki back on himself.
What if it's called Loki's, but then in the final episode, a la like Falcon and Winter Soldier, they drop the S? when we reach the singularity of Loki.
I love it.
I thought the name was a fun
Just have
addition.
Justin Timberlake
but you're right.
in there.
I'm just
Justin Timberlake comes in as a variation of Loki that is Sean Parker from The Social Network. He looks at the title card and he says, drop the S, just Loki. It's cleaner. A million Lokis isn't cool. You know what is cool? A billion Lokis.
You're right. You've convinced me. Loki is definitely better. It makes more sense. And then, but then we also set up the opportunity for different cameos. Maybe they just don't want to pay that many people, but the idea of having like a bunch of like other just Marvel fans who just want to like get in on this action, you know, like a lot of like, who's that? Oh, that guy from a TV show. You just have him show up as Loki. Then you have like one of these other big stars have like, this would never happen, but like Chris Evans come back and play a variant Loki or something like that.
Yeah.
That would be so cool. Or even Chris Hemsworth like does a
blast.
cameo as a variant Loki who's like killed right away. And then that's just opportunity for more character development. Seeing how a team of Lokis interacts with each other would be beyond infuriating because they're all going to try and betray each other.
It'd be a blast. It would be so much fun to watch that. Especially, that's the one thing that unites them is they all act like that. It's so funny.
Yeah.
The team was never supposed to work. She knew it would never work. They're Lokis.
Yeah. And then, yeah, you're right. The idea, too, that she just uses them all as cannon fodder to get what she wants is like would be a very cool moment, too. Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else to add, Kevin?
I think that's all I got. I really hope that the 4th episode is better. I'm starting to lose faith, though.
I'm losing faith. I've heard something. I saw something today where Tom Hiddleston is like the 4th and 5th episode is when it like completely kicks into gear. So that would be on track for all these other TV shows we've watched. Now's the time it's supposed to be ramping up. I'm excited for next week after our talk. I wasn't excited for this episode.
Me neither.
But I guess I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm definitely going to watch it, and we're going to be talking about it next week. So if you got it this far in the podcast, please, check out next week's. We're going to keep doing this. We're going to be here with you every step of the way to complain and praise as needed. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Bye.
Bye.